students, in this video, today we are going to be learning how to graph absolute value equations, okay? Absolute value equations. So your heading today is obviously graphing absolute value equations. The lesson number is 2.6. Please copy this down. I'm going to move on like always, so pause the video when you need to. As you can see, students, it is already starting. What am I talking about? Let me explain. I have told you that we're going to be learning this year how to graph a number of different types of equations or inequalities. We've learned how to graph linear equations, linear inequalities, I forgot to type these, compound inequalities, disjunctions, conjunctions, and now we're learning how to graph absolute value equations, okay? So, you really need to make sure that you can look at these different types of equations or inequalities and recognize what type it is. And I will help you do that as we go along. I will be showing you what each one looks like so you can learn to recognize them. Here's what I'm going to do today. So here's a little bit of a schedule. Excuse me. I'm first going to show you what an absolute value equation looks like. Then I'm going to show you what the graph looks like. Then I'm going to give you the steps to graph these. I'm going to show you why we use these steps, and then I'm going to graph some for you, okay? So let's jump right into this. First of all, here's what an absolute value equation will look like. First of all, here's the model if you want to write this down. Okay, that's the model. Of course, A's a number, B's a number, and C's a number. So, an absolute value equation might look like this. That would be an absolute value equation. Well, Mr. Earhart, there's no A outside. Yeah, there is. You can't see it. There's a 1 right there. Same thing. Well, there's no C, Mr. Earhart. Well, yeah, there is. Just put plus 0 or minus 0. Okay? So basically an absolute value equation is when you have your y, then an equal sign, and then you have an absolute value with what on the inside? X. There must be an X on the inside of the absolute value in order for it to be an absolute value equation. So here's another example. We can put a -2 here, an X all by itself, and then -6. That would be an absolute value equation. There's a number on the outside, that's fine. Well, Mr. Earhart, there's no minus B. Yeah, you can put -0 if you want to, okay? And then, of course, your C would be a 6 here, -6. So, this A, B, and C is really not what I'm trying to show you. What I'm simply trying to show you is an absolute value equation. We'll have your y equals, and then it's going to have numbers, but it must have an x inside the absolute value. If that happens, you have an absolute value equation. Got it? Alright, now, what about the graph? What does it look like? For example, when you graph a linear equation, you know you're always going to get out a line, right? Might be slanted, might be vertical or horizontal, might be vertical, but you know you're going to get out a line. Well, when you're graphing an absolute value equation, what will you always get out? Are you ready? Make note of this. You will always get out a V. Now, some of them will be really wide V's. Some of them will be really narrow V's. Some of them will open downward like this, so I guess it's really not a V. We'll call it an upside down V. Some will be really wide, but they will be V-shaped. Got it? Please make note of that in your notes. And maybe you should write that sentence down. An absolute value equations graph will always be V-shaped. Upside down or not, it'll be V-shaped. Also make note in your notes, this point right here, the point of the V, is called your vertex. You need to know that. We're going to use that word a lot. So the point of the V vertex. In fact, when we go to graph these, what do you think the first thing is we want to know? Yep, you guessed it, the vertex. So when we graph these in a couple minutes, the first thing we're going to find is the vertex. Okay, so take notes on this, write down anything extra you need to, and we're going to move on. Here are the steps for graphing an absolute value equation. There are 4 of them. I'm going to put them up here quickly. After the 4th one, you can pause the video and then copy them down, okay? Step 1, you're going to find the vertex. Now, this might sound weird. I will explain all of this later. Find the vertex by setting the inside of the absolute value equal to 0 and solving. Next, write a T of V. I'm going to use this for the rest of the year as an abbreviation for table of values, okay? Write a table of values that holds 5 points, put the vertex in the middle. Step 3, fill in the rest of your table of values. Step 4, sketch the graph. Now, I'm moving on. You'll probably want to pause the video and copy those down, okay? Alright, moving on. Let's graph one of these. And then when I'm done graphing, I'm going to show you why we used these 4 steps. Okay? Alright, here we go. Copy this problem in your notes if you would, please. And then go ahead and draw a coordinate plane. I'll give you just a second to do that. Copy this problem in your notes, please. And then draw a coordinate plane. Okay, here we go. If you need more time, just pause the video. Now, step 1 is find the vertex by setting the inside of the absolute value equal to 0. Well, here's the inside of the absolute value. Do you see it? Isn't that the inside? Sure it is. So we take it and we set it equal to 0 and we solve. So x minus 2. Set it equal to what? 0. That's what it says, guys. Set the inside equal to 0 and solve. Bring the 2 over and make it a positive 2. So our vertex so far is 2, comma, blank. Are you with me? Let's go over it again. Take the inside of the absolute value. Set it equal to 0 and solve. Whatever you get, that's the x value of your vertex. So the only thing we're missing here is our what? The y value. Well, this is really cool. Now I'm gonna explain to you why later. Got it? I'm gonna explain to you why later. But the y value, whenever you're dealing with an absolute value equation, is always this number right here that's being added or subtracted to the absolute value. So see this number right here in the end? That's always, and I mean always, going to be your y value. Isn't that simple? I mean, my goodness. Now, don't get confused if there would have been like a negative 2 right here. Don't ever think that's the y value. That number is being multiplied times the absolute value. It's multiplying itself times the absolute value. I'm not talking about that number. I'm talking about this number right here that's being added or subtracted on the end. It always goes here. Now, let's pretend for a second, because this does happen in your homework. Let's pretend for a second that there's no number here, okay? Then what would you put right here for your y value? Well, you could just put plus what number? 0. So if there's no number there, then you just put 0 right there. Okay, alright, so continuing on. So I do have a number there. It's 3, so I put 3 here. So I did step 1, didn't I? I found the vertex by setting the inside of the absolute value equal to 0 and solving, and then bringing down this number here. So I did it. What step 2 say to do? Write a table of values that holds 5 points. Here it is. There's my table of values. Make sure it holds 5 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That holds 5 points. And do what? Put the vertex in the middle. So 2, 3 goes in the middle. Now, are these problems long? Yes. Are they a pain? Yes. Are they difficult? Absolutely not. This is simple. How many of you cannot take this middle right here, set it equal to 0, and solve? How many of you cannot take this number here and write it right here? This is not difficult. And then how many of you cannot draw a table of values, put the vertex in the middle? Now, we're going to fill in the rest of the table of values. So, here's 2. Let's go up. 3, 4. Now here's 2. Let's go down. 1, 0. I mean, guys, how many of you cannot do that? We're counting by ones. Now you take each number and put it in for x. Be very, very careful. For the x right here, I'm going to put a 4. So I'm going to cross off the x, put a 4 right here. Got it? So I have a negative sign. Then an absolute value. 4 minus 2. 4 negative 2. That's 2. Then bring down your positive 3. Got it? What's the absolute value of 2? 2. But there's a negative on the outside, so that's a negative 2, positive 3, and that would be a 1. Now, let's try the number 3. Got a negative sign here, then absolute value. 3 minus 2 is 1. Bring down your positive 3. The absolute value of 1 is 1, but there's a negative sign on the outside, so negative 1, positive 3, that's 2. Now let's substitute. Well, we do not need to substitute 2 in, because we already know what we'd get out. We'd get out a 3. So now we're going to put a 1 in for x. Here we go. Bring down your negative sign. Inside the absolute value is 1 minus 2 or 1, negative 2. That's negative 1, positive 3. Now, what is the absolute value of negative 1? Positive 1. But there's a negative on the outside, so that makes it a negative 1. Positive 3. We got a 2. Notice those two numbers right there match, by the way. We'll talk about that later. And lastly, let's put in a 0 for x. So bring down your negative sign. Inside the absolute value, we have 0 minus 2 or 0 negative 2. That's negative 2. Bring down your positive 3. The absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2, but there's a negative on the outside, so that makes it a negative 2. Positive 3, which is 1. Notice these numbers here match. Now, Mr. Earhart, will these numbers here always match like this? Yes, always, as long as, remember your vertex was 2, 3, right? 2, 3. As long as this x value right here is a whole number, or as long as it's a fraction that involves a 1/2, like if it was 1/2 or 2 1/2 or negative 3 1/2 or 4 1/2, okay? As long as this number right here is either a whole number or a number that has a 1/2 in it somewhere, positive or negative, then yes, these numbers here will always match. If you don't have that here, then these numbers will not match, which is okay. It's no big deal. I'm just trying to help you have confidence in what you're doing so you know what you're doing, okay? All right, now, lastly, sketch the graph. Well, my goodness, guys, I mean, let's plot the vertex first. Over 2, up 3. There's the vertex. This point here, 3, 2. Over 3, up 2. This point, 4, 1. Over 4, up 1. Let's plot this point. I'm going to check them off. Let's plot this point here. 1, 2. Over 1, up 2. Let's plot this point. Over 0, up 1. Look at that V shape, guys. It's perfect. I mean, it's perfect. Spot on. There we go. So I have a V-shaped graph, just like we're supposed to. That's the vertex, which is the vertex right here. Everything's perfect. Now, I want to explain to you how this worked, or why this worked, okay? So let me take a second and explain this to you. Now, students, let me say a couple things before I explain to you why we use these steps. Number one, if you don't understand what I'm about ready to say, relax. It's okay. You can still follow these steps and do fine. Number two, I'm going over this quickly just for people in the class who have an advanced mind in mathematics, and there are about 4 of you, probably 3, 4, 5 of you that have an advanced mind who can grasp this and do really well with this. And then lastly, I am going to explain it quickly because it's not side of 2, I'm going to get out a negative 1, which is still 1, because the absolute value of negative 1 is 1. Now what I just said there probably didn't make a lot of sense. I'll say it one more time, I'm going to move on. The reason you set this equal to 0 is 0 is that middle point. That's why it gives you the vertex, okay? 0, when you set the inside equal to 0, it gives you that number. That's the middle point. Because again, if 2 is my value for x, which it is, because 2 minus 2 is 0, then I know if I go up to 3, I'm going to get a 1 in here. And if I go down to 1, I'm going to get out a 1 also, because a negative 1 is still a 1. That's one reason. Now, why is this number here? The vertex was 2, 3. Why does this number here automatically go here? Well, here's why. Think about it. If 2 makes this whole inside become 0, which it does, let's put a 2 right here. 2 minus 2 is 0. You have the absolute value of 0. The absolute value of 0 is always going to be 0. And 0 plus 3 is 3. In other words, here's why you always use this number. Because this number right here is always going to give you what? When you put it in, it's always going to give you out what right here? It's always going to give you out 0. And then 0 plus or minus this number here will always be this number. I hope that makes sense, okay? So that's why. Now, one more comment. Again, if I'm going too fast and losing you, no big deal. I'm just trying to share stuff with you now. If there's a negative sign on the outside right here, it'll always open downward. If this would have been a positive sign, then the view will open upward, okay? Alright, that's it. That's just a little bit of why we do it. Now, let's try one more. And again, if you did not understand what I just said, don't worry about it. Anyone can do these steps, okay? Alright, now, let's go ahead and let's graph another one. Let's try this one. So, I'm going to pause a minute. I want you to copy this down and then draw a table of, draw a coordinate plane, okay? I'll give you just a minute to do that. Copy this in your notes, please, and then draw a coordinate plane. Okay, students, and here we go. Now, I'm going to actually bring these steps over. That's what I'm going to do. Let's go back a page. Let's go like this. Let's go like this. Let's go like this. This. And there. Alright, now, let's graph this equation here using our steps. Step 1, take the inside of the absolute value, set it equal to 0, and solve. There it is, okay? So, 2x plus 1 equals 0. Bring the 1 over and make it negative. Divide by 2, and look at that, you did it. You took the inside of the absolute value, you set it equal to 0, and you solved. So easy, guys. So the vertex is negative 1/2, the x value. Now all that we have to do is find the y value, correct? Well, I've taught you how to do that. Look at the number that's being added or subtracted to the absolute value right here. Negative 4, not this. This is being multiplied times the absolute value. This is being added or subtracted. So negative 4 is going to go right in here. And we have our absolute value. So step 1 is done. Check it off. Step 2, write a table of values that holds 5 points and put the vertex in the middle. Okay, I can do that, no problem. And actually, I want to do it over here so I have room to work. Under my absolute value, nice straight line there on my table of values. And right in the middle, I put my vertex, negative 1/2, negative 4. Step 2 is done. Step 3, fill in the rest of the table of values. Okay, think of a number line, guys. Here's 0, here's 1, here's negative 1/2. Got it? See it? If I'm going to go up, listen, you do not have to go to 1.5 or 2.5. Go to the nearest whole number. So here's negative 1/2. We're going to go to the right. What's the next whole number you see? 0. And then what's the next whole number? 1. Now here's negative 1/2. What's the next whole number going this way? simplify the inside of the absolute value. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3. Bring down your negative 4. Now, what is the absolute value of 3? It's 3. Negative 3 times 3. Remember, you multiply first. So, well, first you take care of your absolute value. The absolute value of 3 is 3. Negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. Bring down your negative 4. Negative 13. Alright. Let's substitute 0 in and see what we get out. So 2 times 0. So I have negative 3, then my absolute value, then a negative 4. Alright, 2 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. What's the absolute value of 1? 1. What's 1 times negative 3? Negative 3. So negative 3, negative 4 would give me a negative 7. Alright. Let's substitute negative 1 in and see what we get out. So 2 times negative 1. Alright, so I've got a negative 3, then my absolute value, then negative 4. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Negative 2 positive 1 is negative 1. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Negative 2 plus 1, or negative 2 positive 1, is negative 1. Now, don't multiply. Do not multiply first. What's the absolute value of negative 1? Positive 1. Now multiply. Negative 3 times 1 is negative 3. Bring down your negative 4. Negative 3, negative 4, negative 7. By the way, I told you, if you have a whole number here, or if you have a 1/2 type of fraction, this number will match this number. This number will match this number. Well, Mr. Earhart, if that's the case, why don't we just save time and stop and put a negative 7 here? Because what if you made a mistake up here? This is a very good way to have checks and balances in your table of values, okay? Alright, for the x here, put a negative 2. So inside the absolute value, I have 2 times negative 2, negative 4. Negative 4 positive 1 is negative 3. Bring down your negative 3 here. Bring down your negative 4 here. Okay, do not multiply first. You simplify your absolute value. The absolute value of 3 is 3. Then the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. Positive 3. Then multiply these together. Negative 9, negative 4, negative 13. Okay, so I've done this. Now sketch the graph. Now, I don't have room for negative 13, so I'm going to have to get rid of this to get me a little room and pull this up here so I can add on some lines to my graph here, okay? What is this? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, there we go. Now, let's plot these points, shall we? Here we go. Let's plot our vertex first. It's probably a good idea to always plot your vertex first. So negative 1/2, and then down 4. So I went over a half, then down 4. Okay, 1, negative 13, so here's 1. Way down to negative 13. 0, negative 7, so here's 0. Way down to negative 7. I've graphed that one, and that one. Negative 1, negative 7. So negative 1, negative 7. It's going to be a really skinny V. And then negative 2, negative 13. There we go. So a really skinny V, which is no big deal. So we'll start right here, and we'll draw one side, and then we'll draw the other side. And there it is. It works every time, students. If you'll use these steps, it works every time, okay? Now, what I'd like us to do is to take a second now and let me show you how to use a graphing calculator, okay? So, I have this is a picture of my old rusty, I guess you could say, rusty, trusty TI-83. And I have nicer ones than this, but my boys use those. So, I'm going to go with the TI. Now, if you have a TI-84, it'll be almost basically identical, so don't worry about that. It really will be, so nothing to worry about, okay? The first thing you want to do is you want to clear out your y equals, so I want you to turn your calculator on, and then I want you to push this button right here, y equals. Now once you do that, you should see a bunch of y equals stuff here. Y subscript 1, y subscript 2 equals, y subscript 3 equals, and there should be 10 of them if you scroll down. There's 10 of those. If there's any equations in any of those, go through and hit delete on each one of those and keep going down push. If you want to write these steps down, feel free to, okay? Push the zoom button. Now when you push the zoom button, you're going to see some options 1 through 7 pop up. It'll say Z box, zoom in, zoom out, Z decimal, Z square, Z standard. 6 is what you want. So you can take your cursor and push the down arrow button right here until it goes down to 6. But there's actually a faster way you should learn to do, okay? If you'll just push the number 6, then it automatically does it for you, okay? So if you'll push zoom and then push the number 6, this will pop up on your screen, a coordinate plane, okay? Now if you're having problems with that, hit second, quit, and start all over again. Hit zoom, and up will pop your options. Then scroll down to 6 and hit enter, or just type the number 6. And when you do that, this will pop up. Now that's good. That means we've got a standard coordinate plane. Now I want you to type second, quit, or second mode, okay? So hit second mode, and your screen should be clear again, okay? Alright, so let's go back to this one that we just graphed, shall we? Let's use that one for our example. So we're going to type this into our calculator and learn how to do it. This is going to save you a lot of time, okay? So here we go, Mr. Earhart. Why'd you show us the other way with all these steps, putting things in? Because not everyone in the class has a grapher. That's one reason. And second reason, you should know how to do these without a grapher, okay? Both ways. It's good for you to use your brain. Now, here we go. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to type this into our calculator. So I want you to push y equals. When you do that, up is going to pop all of your things, okay, that you have. All of your y equals. You've already cleared all these out, so make sure you're at number 1, okay? And I just messed up here. Hold on 1 second. There we go. Now, so you should have y subscript 1 and an equal sign, and the cursor should be right here flashing, okay? Now, I want you to type -3. Now, when you type -3, do not use this negative here. That's a minus sign. Use the negative sign right here, okay? So go ahead and type -3. Now, what comes next? An absolute value. How do we get those? Well, I'm glad you asked. After you've typed -3, I want you to push. Now, if you want to take notes on this off to the side so you know how to do it, that's fine. Feel free to, okay? That'd be a great idea. Push the math button. Now, when you push the math button, you're going to have 4 words going across the top. This is going to disappear. This will be gone. And you'll have the word math right here, number right here, NUM, and then CPX, and then something else, PRB, I believe. Anyways, this is going to be highlighted right here. You want to use the right arrow button and scroll over 2 places until you're on CPX, okay, right here. Now, it should be the complex number. We're not going to get to what it stands for, but scroll over till you're right here, okay? So let's review. I asked you to push y equals, and when you did, this popped up. Then I told you to type in -3 because of this right here. Then I said hit math, and when you did that, then I said scroll over to where it says CPX. Okay, you have number, something else here, and then CPX. So scroll over and make sure this is highlighted. When you do that, look at option 5. Now you can scroll down to option 5 and hit enter, or just push the number 5. But look at option 5. It says ABS parentheses. That's absolute value. So push the number 5 or scroll down to the number 5 and hit enter. When you do that, here's what's going to pop up on your screen. It's going to go back to this screen, and you're going to see -3 and then ABS, then parentheses. All that means is -3, which is what we have, then absolute values. So what are you going to type next then? 2x plus 1. So type 2. Now where's the x? It's right here. Push that button right there. That's the X button right there. I'm circling it for you over and over and over. Hurry before my finger falls off. Do you see it there? That's the one you want to push, okay? This right here. Push that, and an X will pop up, and then plus 1. And then yes or no. Is that the end of the So close your parentheses. Push this right here and close your parentheses. There you go. So you just told your computer you have a negative 3, then an absolute value of 2x plus 1, and then put minus, not negative, minus 4. Booyah. Now, you're ready to graph. The problem is, let me get my calculator caught up. Go ahead and push. Okay, you have all this typed in. Now see the word graph right here. Go ahead and push the word graph. And nothing's going to happen. Well, you'll see a real small V at the bottom. That's because remember your window was set up for 10, 10, 10, and 10, remember? But we know the graph is way down here at negative 13, okay? So what you want to do is you want to change your window to give you a better window up here. So what I want you to type right now on your screen, you should have this. Right now you should have a coordinate plane with a wee little V right down here like that, okay? Well, what I want you to push is second quit. So go ahead and push second quit, and that should disappear. Now we want to change our window, okay? So push the window button right here. When you push the window button, you'll see it's going to say x minimum negative 10, x maximum 10. That's telling you that your x-axis right now is going from negative 10 to 10. Now, is the x-axis the problem? Well, no, not at all. We've got plenty of room going this way. The problem is the y-axis. Keep going down. You'll see y minimum. Oh, by the way, do you see this on your screen? Do you see x? SCL, that means the scale. In other words, are you going by 1s, 2s, or 3s? Well, we're going by 1s, so that's fine. Now look at your y minimum, negative 10. Look at your y maximum, 10. Well, dudes, students, I don't need for my y-axis to go all the way up here at positive 10. I could probably start my y-axis at where? Positive 1. So change your y maximum to 1. Your y max to 1. Now, how far down do you want your y-axis to go? Well, at least negative 13. I'm going to put negative 20. So make your y minimum negative 20. And by the way, when you type in negative 20, use negative right here. Now hit graph, and you're going to see something like this. You're going to see the coordinate plane. The x-axis will be up here. Here's the y-axis right here. And you're going to see the V shape about right here. Okay, very cool. Now, can I show you one more cool feature that's going to make you want to throw something at me if I was there? Because remember, all this time I've been teaching you your table of values. Remember, the table of values for this was, let's see, it was 1/2. It was 1/2. No, it was negative 1/2. Negative 4. And then it was, let's see, 0, negative 7. So negative 1, negative 7. And then what else was it? It was negative 1, negative 2, 13, and 1, 13. So negative 2, negative 13. Okay, you should have this in your notes. Did you know, now that you've typed this in, this would have popped up for you? Let me show you, okay? Go ahead and push Y, clear off your screen at second quit. Get your screen totally cleared off. Then hit Y equals, okay? When you hit Y equals, you're going to see your equations right there. Now hit, see that word table? It's a real small word. Right above the graph button it says table. So hit second and then graph, or second table. When you push that, look what pops up. A nice table of values. So really, can I tell you something? All you had to do was put the vertex right here in the middle like this. And then go to your table of values and say, okay, let's see here. 0 gives me out a negative 7. Negative 1 gives me out a negative 13. Scroll down. 0 gives me out, or let's see, negative 1 gives me a negative 7. And negative 2 gives me a negative 13. If you're not seeing this, email me or I can try to help you with this. That'll save you a lot of time. So there's your table of values for you, okay? That will save you a lot of time, but you've still got to find the vertex. If you don't find the vertex first, then you don't know what goes in the middle. And if you don't know what goes in the middle, then you don't know what y values to use. And if you don't know what what x values to use, sorry. And if you don't know what x values to use, then you can't look on your table of values on your screen and put the y values in. Okay? So be very careful about that. Okay, it's time for you to practice with some homework problems. So I hope this video's been a help to you. If you have any questions, never hesitate to call or email.